Every generation inherits one defining economic question. For Europe after Second World War, it was reconstruction. For Asia, it was industrialization. For Africa, the question is different. Can the world's youngest population become the world's greatest economic advantage? Or will it become its greatest missed opportunity? Because over the next 3 decades, Africa will experience one of the greatest demographic shifts in modern history. Whether that becomes a story of prosperity or persistent poverty depends on choices that are being made today. Hello and welcome to Alternative Narratives, a space dedicated to Africa's development journey, where we challenge conventional views using data, history, and economic reasoning. I'm Wisdom Zimuto. By 2050, 1 in every 4 people on Earth will be African. That single statistic has shaped almost every conversation about Africa's future. For some, it signals economic miracle waiting to happen. For others, it signals unemployment, migration, and instability on an unprecedented scale. Both groups are looking at the same number. Both are asking the wrong question. History has never rewarded countries simply for having more people. Countries become prosperous when they build economies capable of turning people into productive workers. That is the question for Africa. Not how many people the continent will have, but what those people will be able to produce. To answer that question, we need to understand 3 things: where Africa's people are moving, how Africa's population is changing, and why some countries transform demographic change into economic growth while others don't. Every country that has escaped poverty has undergone one transformation before almost every other. Its people moved, not across borders, but from places where productivity is low to places where productivity could grow. That movement is called urbanization. Cities do something villages cannot. They bring workers, businesses, capital, universities, infrastructure, and ideas together in one place. That is why cities have been the engine of economic transformation for more than 2 centuries. In 1960, most of the world's population lived in rural areas. By the mid-2000s, the world became predominantly urban. But this was never simply a change of address. It was a movement of labor from low productivity agriculture to higher productivity manufacturing and services. Urbanization did not create prosperity on its own. It created the conditions in which prosperity became possible. Africa is urbanizing, but it is urbanizing differently. North America, Europe, East Asia, and much of Latin America built cities alongside industrialization. Factories came first, jobs followed. People moved because economic opportunity already existed. Across much of Africa, the sequence has been reversed. People are moving first, but manufacturing has not expanded at the same pace. Formal employment has struggled to absorb a rapidly growing urban population. This is urban expansion without structural transformation. Africa is, of course, not one country. North Africa urbanized much earlier than the rest of the continent. West Africa has recently crossed the halfway mark. East and Southern Africa remain predominantly rural. Yet, despite these regional differences, one broad pattern remains. Urban population is growing faster than productive employment. That distinction matters, because cities do not generate prosperity simply by becoming larger. They generate prosperity when they become more productive. History shows that urbanization creates opportunity for economic transformation, but opportunity alone is never enough. Which brings us to the second demographic story. It is not only where Africa's people are moving, it is also how old they are. Not all populations are the same. 2 countries can have exactly the same number of people and have completely different economic outcomes. The differences lie not in how many people they have, but how old these people are. Across Europe, Asia, North America, Oceania, their population is aging. Birth rates are falling, life expectancy is increasing. The result is fewer workers entering the labor market and more people leaving it. Every year, a smaller workforce must support a larger retired population. That changes everything. Economic growth slows, labor shortages emerge, governments spend more on pension and healthcare. The burden carried by each worker steadily increases. Africa is moving in the opposite direction. Look at the population pyramid. Its broad base tells us something extraordinary. Nearly 40% of Africa's population is under the age of 15. Just above them sits another remarkable story. It's a working age population that is already the largest in Africa's history and still growing. In other words, Africa is building two forces at the same time. One is entering factories, offices, farms, laboratories, and businesses today, and the other is still in classroom, preparing to enter the economy tomorrow. No other region in the world has both at the same scale. That is why economists pay so much attention to Africa's demographic transition. It represents a window of opportunity unlike anything the world has ever seen in decades. But a young population by itself creates nothing. Young people do not automatically produce economic growth. Employment does. And this brings us to one of the most misunderstood ideas in development economics, the demographic dividend. A demographic dividend occurs when a country has proportionally more people of working age than dependents. More people are able to work, more household earn income, savings increase, investment increase, consumption expands, governments collect more tax revenue, businesses find other markets, economic growth accelerates. Notice something important. Nothing of those occur because people are young. They occur because young people become productive workers. That distinction matters because a demographic dividend is never guaranteed. It must be built. Without education, without skills, without productive industries, without employment, the very same demographic structure becomes a completely different outcome. Population creates possibility, policy determines outcome. This is not the first time the world has faced a demographic moment. Half a century ago, Asia stood where Africa stands today. Countries such as South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, and later China experienced a rapid increase in the share of working-age adults. Their governments recognize something important. Demographic change does not create prosperity. Productive employment does. So they built economies capable of absorbing millions of young workers. Manufacturing became the center of economic strategy. Factories expanded. Exports grew. Workers moved from low productivity agriculture into high productivity industries. At the same time, education changed. Schools were no longer preparing students simply to graduate. They were preparing engineers, technicians, skilled workers, and entrepreneurs for an industrial economy. As employment expanded, incomes increased, savings rose. Financial institutions channeled those savings into factories, infrastructure, technology, and business investment. Higher productivity generated higher incomes. Higher incomes financed more investment. Investments created even more productive jobs. A virtuous cycle had begun. South Korea illustrates what happened. In 1960, its GDP per capita was approximately $158. By the year 2000, it had risen to more than $12,000. Today, it exceeds $33,000. South Korea did not become prosperous because it had more people. It became prosperous because it transformed demographic opportunity into economic productivity. That is the lesson history offers Africa. A demographic dividend is never inherited, it is earned. History has shown us what is possible. The question is whether Africa is following the same path. At the moment, the evidence suggests otherwise. Africa's population is growing rapidly. Its cities are expanding rapidly. Its workforce is expanding rapidly. But its productive economy is not. Across much of the continent, manufacturing remains too small to absorb millions of young people entering the labor market every year. In some countries, manufacturing has begun to decline before industrialization has even taken hold. The consequences are predictable. Millions of young Africans are ready to work. Too few productive jobs are being created. Across much of sub-Saharan Africa, youth unemployment remains persistently high. Even where young people do find work, many are employed in low productivity, informal activities that generate little income, limited innovation, and few opportunities for long-term growth. The challenge, therefore, is not population growth. The challenge is productivity growth. Without productive employment, demographic opportunity gradually becomes demographic pressure. And history tells us that this window of opportunity will not remain open forever. Fortunately, Africa does not need to invent new development models. History has already provided a playbook. The challenge is whether Africa is prepared to follow it. First, create productive jobs. Economic growth is meaningful when it creates employment. Every economic policy should be judged by a simple question. Does it create productive work? Second, industrialize. No country has become prosperous by exporting raw materials while importing finished products. Every battery produced outside the Democratic Republic of Congo, every chocolate bar produced outside Cote d'Ivoire, every textile imported instead of produced locally represents jobs, income, technology, and tax revenues leaving Africa. Industrialization is not about factories alone. It's about capturing more value from Africa's own resources. Third, build skills for the economy you want. Education should not prepare students for unemployment. It should prepare technicians, engineers, entrepreneurs, scientists, innovators for the industries Africa intends to build. Human capital should follow economic strategy. Fourth, build productive cities. Cities become engines of prosperity only when they combine people with infrastructure, transport, energy, finance, and industry. Urbanization without productivity merely reallocates poverty. But urbanization with productivity transforms economy. Finally, build one Africa. No individual African economy is large enough to absorb the continent's demographic wave on its own. But together, through the African Continental Free Trade Area, Africa becomes one of the world's largest integrated markets. Scale attracts investments. Investments create jobs. Jobs transform demographics into prosperity. History has shown us the destination. The question is whether Africa is prepared to take the journey. Every generation inherits a defining economic opportunity. For Africa, this is ours. The conversation about Africa's future has focused too long on numbers. Population growth, urbanization, youth dependency ratios, but history teaches us a different lesson. The countries that prospered were never distinguished by the size of their population. They were distinguished by the quality of their decisions. Now imagine those same decisions meeting the largest and youngest workforce the world has ever seen. Imagine an Africa where every young person has the skills to participate, where every city produces more than it consumes, where every natural resource is processed before it is exported, where every regional border connects markets instead of dividing them. It is economically possible. History has already shown us what works. The evidence is clear. The question is no longer whether Africa has the people. The question is whether Africa will build the economy those people deserve. People are power. Policy unlocks that power. Productivity turns that power into prosperity. This is Alternative Narratives, where data meets perspective. I'm Wisdom Zimuto. Thank you for watching. If this episode challenged the way you think about Africa's future, subscribe, share it with someone who enjoys evidence-based conversations, and join me in the next Alternative Narrative.